Hello. I'm going to check if okay, it's working. So hello everyone. My name is Belu from Inandao, and today we have a new video of art history with a female perspective, where we are giving visibility of important or personal important woman artists. So today I brought Shirin Neshat to talk about her. Personally, I'm interested in her because right now I'm living with an Iranian family, and I think it's very nice to know about the culture and about them through an artist, through art. So, Shirin Neshat is a feminist artist that has explored different art from photography, from video, cinema, theater, live performance to opera. So without any interested in making an autobiographical work, her work is very personal, like as all artists, of course, but in this case I think it's important to know her background for a better understanding on what she's doing, because we cannot consider her work without looking at her life. Her work it's like an embodiment of the response to the world and the life that she has lived. Shirin Neshat was born in Iran in 1957 to a middle class family in a very religious city. She went to a Catholic boarding school, and there was like kind of a contradiction between her family being very modern and religious, like a contradiction between her home and the city she lived in. Uh, she knew early young that she wanted to be an artist, and she saw how her father had like this admiration for the Western world, and he encouraged her to go and study abroad. That's why in 1975, at age 17, she went to study art to Los Angeles in the United States. So here we can see a picture of her student ID, and then on the right side, her being an early, like a young artist. While she was studying abroad in 1917, the Iranian Revolution happened. Her country was now politically and religiously changed. Of course, she had a lot of fear. She desperately wanted to go back home, but the airports were closed, and the relationship with the United States and Iran was very bad. Also, Iraq war started, so her family also didn't want it to her to come back because it could be dangerous. So now she was, even though she was physically distant from her family, now she also felt emotionally distant. So it was a very, very hard time for her. When she finished school, when she graduated, she moved to New York, where she tried to start like a new chapter of her life. And she stopped creating. She stopped painting. She was working in other things, because I think she was kind of waiting for a bigger inspiration. And it was in 1990 when she finally could go back to Iran. It was the first time she could see her family in 11 years, and also the first time she returned after the revolution. So this trip to Iran was very important. Her personal and her artistic life all converge in this return to Iran, and it kind of gave her a purpose. Now she had the urge to become an artist, because art became the vehicle that maintained the relationship between her and her lost family and her country. After this visit, she goes back to New York, and after proving, as she said, that she was terrible in painting, she started exploring photography. So she tried to establish a visual vocabulary that could translate some of these issues into images opposed to words. And she, in this time, she created a series called Woman of Allah. Uh, and she tried to make images as paradoxical as possible, like very extreme to look at. So here it's an example of this series, Woman of Allah. She worked on it from 1993 to 1997. Now she felt that she had like a more neutral view, as she has been alone, absent for a long time. And she was very interested in the notion of martyrdom as something essential in understanding the Islamic revolution. In the way that martyrs stood in between the love of God, devotion to God, and violence and death. And for her, it was very interesting, these subjects. And it was always from a curiosity and not on like pointing fingers, as she was told later. Also, she really wanted to explore the woman role in the revolution, how women were active in war, and she tried to do this like in a very minimalistic way. So she reduced her expressions in the woman body, the text that it's poetry written by a woman before the revolution. She printed the photographs, and did the paintings by, the text by hand. Um, so she has the woman body, the text, the veil, that it's like a very important symbol of the Islamic revolution, because it's a symbol of both of oppression and of liberation. So oppression seen from the Western world, and liberation seen by the revolutionaries, like liberation of the West. And of course, the weapon that it suggests violence. So these were the main elements she played with in the different portraits. Here's more examples. She got a lot of criticism. People would say that she was supporting the revolution. Others would say that she was against it, that she was making, as I say sensationalist idea of violence, etc. But for her, it was like the nostalgic, romantic point of view of an Iranian that wanted to make a bonding with her lost country. She felt like this was the way that she could return to Iran, of course, not physically, but emotionally. Also, with female body, she saw that it's very problematic in the Islamic society. How expressive the body can be when it's so controlled and defined. So how only through the eyes that you're exposed you can communicate, and you can communicate so much. So the eyes also became like an erotic and seductive part of the body. And she also thought that the more men try to control women, the more empowered they can become. So after doing this series, The Woman of Allah, she felt that the series was like very monumental, but also very static with the photography. And she was introduced to videos. And in videos, she felt like a better way of communicate what she was feeling, because she could create in movement something more like experimental, but yet very, very aesthetically similar to the photographs that she was creating. So in 1998, she created her first video that's called Turbulent, where she put, it's an installation where she put two images, one in front of the other. So you kind of have to choose where you're looking. And in one video, you can see a man with this audience that are also men singing, singing a prayer. And it's very solemn, and if you see the video, you don't get enough of emotion from there. And on the other hand, you see the woman dressed in black, where she's not allowed to have an audience, And when she starts singing, it's very intimate, and you can really feel the emotion in her. Even though she's alone, you get a deeper emotion with her video, with her song. So it's like the two oppositions. And it's interesting that you as an audience have to play in deciding where you want to look, what you like, what it's throwing you to look more to one or to another. That's a game that she might want to play. And here it's like an example of how the installation would look like. After her first experiment in video, she met a lot of people, and she liked this idea of like a collective. In videos, she had to work with more people. She was not only alone with her photographs. So she learned more, and she went to Morocco and filmed the second video that's called Raptor in 1999. And in here, she applied everything that she learned in the first video, Turbulent, but now she kind of made a dance with the camera. It's this video, it's much more a dancing, a choreograph than the first one. So in the right side, it was the same as the other one. The installation had two opposite videos. On one side, that's the right side, we could see 100 men moving in a fort, like a very masculine world space, versus women in black that were in nature, in this beach ocean. The woman went slowly to the sea and took a boat and left in the boat. So maybe this could also represent this freedom that nature can gives you, or also the freedom that woman might be searching for. And this was like a good exploration for her. It's another example of the same installation. I didn't put the videos in this presentation, but if you're interested, you can find them by the name. They are in the web, where you can see both videos. You can see them both at the same time, or one and then the other. And it's a very, very interesting thing to look at. After this, she went to Turkey and shot Soliloquy, another video, in 2000. In here, she was comparing architecture of East and West. So a world that it's not only like different, but it's in constant conflict. So here she explored how architecture says so much about the ideological basis of a society, like how public spaces, like how they are built, can say so much about how the society is built. Also with the shapes, like in the Western world, everything is more like it's more. It's like bigger and like square shaped, and in the Western we can see more oval shapes. So it's also interesting, this approach that she did for comparison. After this, in 2001, she shot another video called The Passage. In here, she was exploring the themes of death, as at that time Palestine was in war with Israel. Her father passed away, also the son of her sister passed away, so she was like very in touch with death. And here we can see a line of men carrying a corpse towards a circle of women that's digging a hole with their hands. So we can see also the shapes here: men in line, women in circle. And like she was very interested in what happens with the body after death, also seeing like so much death around her, like what's the body then. And that's why she also wanted to play with the rituals. After, in this video, there's a ritual with fire, so she has fire, water, earth, air, that are like what represent the physical world. So she, I think she wanted to explore that too. This film was filmed in Morocco in 2001. Another of her films is it's called Tuba, that was filmed in 2002. It was filmed in Mexico. She worked with Mexican natives. And in here we can see this tree that it's called tuba. Tuba is a sacred tree in paradise, and it's the only feminine tree in the Quran. This film was motivated after 9/11 with the global idea of insecurity. So the tree that represents paradise, heaven, she explored the relationship between men and women, a tree, and men that were dressed in clothes that we can see here that suggest the people of power that control these other two. Um, and here she also explores the Iranian identity and the movement of people from their homeland to like an imagined utopia. And in this shot, an elder woman leans against the tuba, the tree, the structure that symbolizes like nourishment, peace and hope for the Sufis, while her closed eyes suggest a state of rest. Her weathered skin and age convey the long journey she has undertaken to get here and the difficulties, of course, of immigration. So after all of these videos, she became like more in love with the narrative and the language of cinema, and all of this experience led her to make her first cinema film. So in here, she had to put together the capacity of art, cinema, politics, and poetry. And she really had to be patient with this because she had to work her tools. It was the first time she did cinema. She didn't know anything about it. So she had to explore. That's why she took time, and she felt like a different pressure that she didn't feel with the other videos. That was the pressure of entertainment. While she was doing the videos, they were like protected in the museums or in some festivals, but she didn't feel the necessity of entertaining as she felt she had to do now with cinema. So she had the double mission of entertainment, but still giving a very artistic and important message for her. She worked here with a book that's called Woman Without Men. It's a very interesting book because the writer got into jail for writing it and then into exile. And it talks about magic realism, explore the idea of different women that go like to this magic garden where they can find themselves. They can find some sort of relief. Um, so these different women have different dilemmas and different aspirations. The main character, like her aspiration is redemption. So she asked for it everywhere, like even in mosque, and she was not given to it until eventually she goes to this garden. That's an orchard. And once she enters here, time stop, sound changes, there's mist, natural sound, and there's like this playing between beautiful but haunting place. And of course, I will not tell the end. So if you feel inspired to see it, I think it would be very interesting for you. After the movies, she went back to photography. In here, in this collection that's called The Book of Kings, she captured the faces of the Arab Spring riot. So it's a collection of history, politics, and again, poetry. She didn't mind anymore to be called uh, like an activist and not an artist, even though for me they can be the same. She went to Egypt to be part of the manifestations of the riots, as she couldn't go to Iran because of her art. She's banned from her own country. Because and in Egypt she felt she could be part of this manifestation and riots. And here she immersed in the energy of the Egyptians, and where she wondered how she could capture the essence of these people, like with dignity, the dignity of the youth that were giving their life for the nation. So it's very important. Like, how could she caption the devotion, patriotism, love, but also atrocity? How to capture pride, dignity, fear, and anxiety? And how could she do all of this without being propagandistic? So that was very difficult. Um, and it was also difficult because she was going back to photography after a long time, and because she didn't want to make a cliche of this. So what she did, she in three different walls, she made a series of three different portraits. One, she called it the masses, that were faces of Arab and Iranian people. That's the one that we can see on the right side. They were different faces. The other one, the patriots, that's on the left. That it's a series of portraits of people with their hand on their chest. That's like the global symbolism of patriotism. And then in the middle, what she called the kings. That would be the oppressive people. And she mixed all of these with letters written um, by people that were in jail, and with a poem. That the poem, it's called the Book of Kings. That it's based on an epic tragedy of the Islamic conquest of Iran. So, and also this is the book that says that saved the Iranian language. So she kind of mixed the contemporary portraits with these letters of Iranian prisoners with this epic poem from the 11th century that also talks like about a tragedy, but of a different time. And she did this by again writing the poems in the faces, or doing drawings on the body of the men. Um, Here we can see like part of one of the walls with the patriots. So she had like the other two walls with the other two images that I showed you. On 2017, she explored in another, like totally different area for her. That's opera. She was asked to be the stage director of Aida. It was very challenging for her because she was never into opera, not even into classic music. But in this particular opera, she was interested because it talks about division of religion and politics and love. So it's kind of her area, but not attached to Iran. That's something that also she wanted. Like she wanted to maybe go away a little bit from that. And also, she thought that she could like change the narrative of the opera, because the traditional idea is created like as a construction of European imagination, where they kind of demonized Egyptians and Ethiopians. So in here, she felt she could do something different. Here it's one of her, her second movie, that's called Land of Dream, that was released in 2021, where she also took like 6 years to do it. And it's like an ironic film, because it shows like the cliche of the United States as a nation of exiles, like a place where people can go and live in freedom. And this kind of has become an irony these days. So her work here was a reaction of what is happening in the United States right now. She felt that as an immigrant, as an Iranian, as a Muslim, she had to give her perspective on this. And this film is about Simi. She's an Aryan woman on a journey to discover what it means to be a free American. And she works for the census, and in an effort to control the citizens, has begun a program to record the dreams of people. So unaware of this devil's plot, Simin is torn between her compassion for those who dreams she is recording and a truth she must find with it. So I think it's also very interesting to explore this movie. So as a summary, we can say that the constant elements of her work are poetry, politics, personal, and paradox, all with P. Poetry because it's an inevitable aspect of her life. Like Iranian people have embraced the language of poetry and always depend on the language of metaphor to say things she can't say directly. Um, Usually, like Farsi, her language is it's very hard to translate because it's usually metaphors. So if you translate it, you wouldn't understand really what they want to say. So for her, I think language of poem it's very in her day to day thinking. Then politics, because of course she is an Iranian, and I don't know if you are living in Iran, probably you have some kind of censor, some kind of oppression, maybe arrest. Then if you live outside Iran, you are in exile and you have lack access to your beloved, to your families. And then also living in the United States, she feels an additional conflict as an outsider and as a Muslim. And as like an Iranian woman artist, she doesn't feel an emotional, moral, or philosophical and political option not to be part of politics. She even envies Western people that don't have that necessity, that they can be a little bit more free of politics. Then personal, because of course every art is personal, and the notion of paradoxical, it's where she explained that everything exists in the sense of duality. Everything is in the sense of in between, embracing the idea of duality in black and white, religions and politics, men and women, rational and mysticism, natural and culture. She's constantly creating. She's now creating a new movie. She has done more portrait series that I didn't show here. And to end, I want to end with a quote of her that's I'd still like to do more. I don't feel like a failure, but I think I feel like I'm struggling all the time. Part of the reason I struggle is my own fault. I'm very ambitious. I do think in a very big way. I take a lot of risks. And because I've changed my medium, I feel like a beginner. I still feel like a young artist, even though I'm not young. And that is the foundation of who I am. I'm still wanting to reinvent myself, and that basically is what keeps me on my toes and keeps me excited. So, yeah, as I said, she's constantly reinventing, creating from different languages, but with kind of similar elements. Um, this is what I had prepared. I don't know if you have comments, if I encouraged you to explore uh, more about her work. If you're interested, if you felt inspired, I think there's a lot that you can take from her. And thank you very much, and see you in the next video.